Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another edition of Ask Dr. Dansinger. We are so excited for our topic today. It is all about diabetic cravings and how do you conquer those diabetic cravings? It's those cravings that lead you to make choices that may not be in the best interest of your health, but they are so hard to break. And we have Dr. Dansinger who's here. He's a diabetes reversal expert with Diabetes Reversal Partners out of Massachusetts. But also, if you have Medicare in Florida, he is also available there as well as Massachusetts to help you meet your goals to reverse your diabetes, especially your type 2 diabetes, but the pre-diabetes as well. We got to get you totally in the clear because the just one sugar molecule can literally scratch those arteries, leading to plaque buildup. And so you got to get that sugar all the way down. And every single choice you make matters, right, Dr. Dansinger?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Kim. Thank you for hosting. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm in Massachusetts and Florida and now New Hampshire and expanding state by state. So New Hampshire is open
Congratulations.
for business.
I didn't know New Hampshire. That is absolutely fantastic. We will have to add that to our website as well. And it's really good for people to know, especially that it is covered by insurance and you have your own personal coach and accountability. And I am going to tell you from firsthand experience that it works. We just had a patient that worked with Dr. Danzinger, and I got a call from her interventional cardiologist, her PAD specialist, and he said, "What did you do? How did you help this patient?" Because for the first time in 2 years, he went into this patient's arteries and the blood was no longer thick and sticky. He didn't have to shoot in extra clot busting drugs into the arteries in order to help him go in there and revascularize, meaning improving the blood flow by clearing out the plaque. In fact, the stents that he had put in prior several months ago, for the first time, no revolving door of treatment, they were all clear. And it was thanks to this patient not only working with Dr. Danzinger, but truly taking to heart everything that he was asking this person to do, which made a huge difference. And for what you did, it was a miracle, Dr. Danzinger. This patient was literally on deck for amputation. This patient was told there was literally no hope. They were going to try to keep this person's leg as long as they could, but that we were only buying time and more time. But for the first time, this doctor came to me and said, "I now have hope for this patient. I really have hope from what I have seen." And that was in much thanks to you, Dr. Danzinger.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. And, I was very excited to work with this patient. It's been about 2 months and such a rapid turnaround. I love working with a patient who is highly motivated and eager to listen and follow through and make the kind of dietary change. So these were all dietary changes. And I have the easy part. All I have to do is believe in a person and provide expertise and encouragement and structure and support. And the patient has the challenging part, which is to follow through and do what needs to be done, which always requires some willpower and some planning. And together we work to find a combination of foods that the patient is, interested in eating, the kind of foods that will make the blood less thick and the arteries heal. And a lot of it comes down to the power of fruits and vegetables, especially the colorful vegetables, a wide range of colorful vegetables. And this patient is happy to eat a wide variety of vegetables that are healthy and help heal the arteries. And you could see how quickly, within 2 months, things really turned around for this patient. So I love my job coaching people to better health. And when you get a patient who has such a rapid turnaround, it's really a reminder to me that I am in the right field of medicine.
We should get you the before and after images because we have them. We have visuals of these arteries, and you should use them in your practice to demonstrate the difference. And I'm sure this patient would be more than happy to make that possible because it was truly remarkable. And I even posted on LinkedIn to say, in the first time in the 5 years that we have been doing this with the Global PAD Association and helping patients, I have seen the difference that walking can make and smoking cessation can make. This is the first time that we have literally had a patient where we truly could see visually, and the doctor could see visually the difference that was made in some small dietary changes for someone who was a type 2 diabetic. Just reducing a few sugar molecules made all the difference in the world. And I know this patient is not in the clear yet, but imagine if we made this much difference in 2 months, what another 2 months will do.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And
So,
so I think a big part of it is reducing those cravings. It's the cravings that kill us.
yeah, so there's a lot of, I crave unhealthy food too sometimes. And, the goal isn't to have zero treats, but the goal is to live your best life and to not let unhealthy food ruin your health. And so, you know, a big part of the reason why people crave, and it may be worse in people with diabetes, starts with the negative effect on the hormones that processed modern food has. So just I'll pick an example of a processed modern food. Say Doritos or Cheetos or Oreos or Snickers bars or ice cream, the and even a first grader could make a long list of unhealthy foods that we could all agree with. It's not subtle. And most recipes for lasagna or spaghetti and meatballs, cheeseburgers, there's thousands of foods that are on restaurant menus in the grocery store that I would call modern foods, foods that probably didn't exist 100 years ago, and certainly didn't exist 1,000 years ago. And we see them every day, and they are specifically designed by professionals to be craveable. And that's where the problem starts. And it messes up our hormones, and we can get into details of that. But on one level, it's obvious, right? The foods are designed to be craveable, and they call out to us.
They can do it. They do it with sugar, they do it with salt, and they actually do it with chemicals as well.
Yeah, 100%. So something about the combination of sugar and fat is especially craveable. Like people don't like there's nothing about a stick of butter that people crave. No one craves fat on its own, right? No one bites into a stick of butter. And nobody eats sugar directly out of the packet. But when you combine fat and sugar together, like in the middle of an Oreo cookie, for example, or when you turn it into frosting, or there's a million different ways to combine starch, I'm sorry, sugar and fat, then it becomes craveable. And it's the combination of the two that it's these combinations of foods that are especially problematic. Fat and salt, sugar and salt. There's, starch and sugar and fat and salt all together is what really calls out to people. And it's, it, you know, it, the food industry each year comes out with hundreds of new combinations that are compelling. And that's a huge challenge for people.
So I guess the big question is, how do you conquer these cravings? And I'm sure with each one, there would be something a little different, but let's get to as many as we can.
Sure. So all of these, all so first of all, just recognizing the problem. Just recognize we live in a world where modern food sits side by side with what I would call natural food. So an example of a natural food is an apple or lettuce or dozens of different types of fruits and vegetables. For the most part, I think we can call these natural foods. They have one ingredient and they're healthy. Or lean proteins. So fish, I would call fish a natural food. Or, the foods that have one ingredient for the most part are natural foods. And so when the hormonal effects of the process than the effects of natural foods. So what you want to do to get your hormones where they need to be, to turn your diabetes around, to normalize your insulin, cortisol, and all the other things that affect appetite, all the hormones, is to find the balance, which is to eat mostly the foods that we're genetically designed to eat, which is fruits and vegetables and lean protein for the most part. Back in the caveman days, that's all they had available. So for most of human history, our human ancestors ate what they could hunt and gather. And that was vegetables, fruits, and lean proteins. And if you can eat that for 90%, then I think that's the right balance. Most people are not doing that. It takes a conscious effort, but that will turn your hormones around and start to reverse all these metabolic diseases.
And you've opened up a little bit of Pandora's box here, because just on Saturday, we were talking with the chairman of the World Food Bank and Alejandro Carrillo, who is a United Nations delegate on regenerative ranching. And coming up, we're also going to be talking about regenerative farming. But overall, it's a series in which we are addressing overall regenerative agriculture and how we need to get back to when we were hunters and gatherers and the natural land, the natural soil that the livestock was eating and regenerating, and the farming, well, the way in which natural plants and things like that were grown in this nutrient rich soil. But so much of what we eat today is not as nutrient rich as it used to be, or nutrient dense. Do you think that if we got back to this idea of regenerative agriculture, the regenerative farming, the way it used to be, and we improve the nutrient density of these natural foods, that our bodies would naturally crave those instead of some of these other processed items that combine the sugar and the fat?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kim. I think people crave whatever they're used to. And so when a person gives up the junk food and just eats fruits and vegetables and healthy proteins for a while, after a couple months, that's what they actually start to crave. But one bite of those, chocolate chip cookies, and you almost have to go back to square one. And so, yes, people crave what they're used to, and so people's taste buds change. And when it comes to regenerative farming, when the anything that you can do, anything that we can do as individuals or as a society to actually reinvest in the old ways of gardening and food is going to improve our health. So, so there are many ways to do that. And so, yes, it's really sad when you look at, if you take a drive across the United States, you see a
Mhm.
lot of corn and you see a lot of soybean, and you see miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of the same crop, and that's not good for the soil. So that's maybe cost effective in the short term because it's efficient, but it depletes the soil. And so works a lot better for healthy food is when you grow, gardens with, that actually keeps the soil much better. And so new techniques of farming that avoid depleting the soil are a
Mhm.
good thing. And it improves the amount of omega-3s in the foods, and it actually improves the measurable nutrient value in the foods. So all that goes hand in hand. It's
You
better
know,
for the planet as well.
I was reading a study that in preparation for the show, and it was saying that with these new regenerative ranching practices, that it balances out the omegas in the beef in particular, which is one of the reasons the imbalance caused by the lack of nutrient rich soil and the variety of grasses and plants that they're eating nowadays versus back then. It's created this imbalance, which has increased the risk for cancer and cardiovascular disease in eating the beef from those livestock versus the way it used to be, where the balancing of the omegas were a little, I think it's omega 3 and omega 6 that get balanced out
That's
with
right.
the right practices.
Yeah, that's correct. And so any animal that's eating wild food is going to have healthier fats in their body. And so, chickens that are allowed to graze and eat, wild have healthier
Mhm.
eggs and more omega-3 in their yolks than chickens that are eating, processed feed. And that's true about wild animals as well. But I
And
think we were
Beth has a
okay, yes.
Beth
Good
wanted to jump
question.
in here. Beth is a type 1 diabetic. I'm so thankful that you showed up, Beth, and you're here. And I appreciate your courage and speaking out. Please go ahead and unmute and share a little bit with Dr. Dansinger and ask him some specifics about how to help you in your situation because it could help other people.
Hi. As Kim stated, I am a type 1. I have I was diagnosed right after I turned 15 and I'm currently 55. I'm terrible with numbers, so I'm not going to try to figure out how many years I've had it, so I'll let you figure that. Um, I am currently on the Omnipod 5 and the Dexcom 6 sensor. I I've been in and out of DKA several times. I've had a lot of problems with my diabetes, and I get a lot of cravings for the sweets and stuff like that. And being I've been on different insulin pumps and stuff like that. And I've been told, being on those that I can eat whatever I want, which for me, it's like, okay, this is a blessing. I'm on the pump. I can eat what I want. I can have however many carbohydrates I want. Because all I got to do is count those carbohydrates, put it into my insulin pump. My pump gives me my insulin for whatever I want to eat, and I'm good to go. Um, how would if you were my doctor and you were, taking care of me, and I come in and said to you, I've letting you know that that's how I've been told that I can take care of myself that way. How would you direct me in another way to where I could be taking better care of myself, to where I'm not eating everything that I want, and that I could get my A1Cs down below a 7.5, and get my blood sugars down below a 124 and not having to worry about having a low blood sugar at 80. How would you be able to help me with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, I would disagree with the idea that it's okay just to eat whatever you want and cover it with your insulin because it seems short-sighted. And it's not, you know, the Omnipod is a tremendous advance. And the Dexcom, glucose, continuous glucose monitor is a tremendous advance. And someday in the future, the insulin and the blood sugar monitoring are going to be speaking perfectly together, almost like a human,
Yeah,
pancreas works. And we're not quite there yet, but you know,
close.
but putting all of that aside, what people are designed to eat is not modern food. It's you know it it's it's the vegetables, fruits, and proteins. And so every time I steer someone and help them figure out how to eat mostly from these three categories, everything improves. And first of all, a person has to just accept the idea that what we should be eating mostly is vegetables, fruits, and lean proteins.
Mhm.
And I use the 90% rule to say, 90% of what you're eating should be coming from those healthy foods and 10% or less of treats. So I think it's okay to, have treats once in a while, but for the most part, let fruit be your treat or, vegetables and protein. So all those foods help reverse cravings because they stabilize the hormones. So if you were my patient, I would say, number one, we have to get your blood sugar under much, much better control. I want to see an A1C as close to 6 as possible, certainly under 7. And, 7 is good, but 6 is better. And I don't like to use a lot of medicine or insulin to achieve an A1C. No one wants to be on any more medicine than they need to be. And so if you can control your blood sugar with less insulin, that's always better than having to jack up the insulin to offset the effects of excess carbohydrate. And so cravings put people into a negative cycle. You crave a food and then you feel guilty for you either push it away with remorse, you either eat it with remorse or you either eat it with guilt or push it away with remorse, and it creates, bad feelings physically and mentally. And then the weight, the everyone wants to be in a positive cycle where they're feeling good mentally and physically, and then that makes it easier to exercise, which makes it easier to see results, which makes it easier to eat healthily, and then it just reinforces itself. So the cycle can go two ways, and I think it starts with healthy food and finding the time and energy and to make the effort to eat colorful salads and eat, there's many types of fish and shellfish out there, and there's 100 ways to make chicken breast or turkey breast. So that's where it starts, and that makes a world of difference. Happened with this recent patient that we were just talking about.
And in
And
the last,
I'm sorry, Kim, go ahead.
well, I was going to ask for some specific suggestions based on a craving, what would be a good option? So knowing the craving, have you had experience with a good substitution to help with each of those cravings. I know the whole idea that if you start, but it's hard to get started. So is there anything that you experience, like, crunchy for crunchy, instead of a Kit Kat bar, have a carrot, things like
Yeah.
that might be really helpful.
My thing is, with when I get my cravings, I have a huge, and this is like a major craving for me, is sugar cookies with tons of frosting on them. And I've got some on my counter in my kitchen right now. The ones you get from Walmart, the real soft, powdery sugar cookies with the frosting on them. My major to-go downfall. And they're like one cookie is like 26 grams of carbohydrates.
Yeah, so I hear you. And then, so on the one hand, we can do our best to find a suitable replacement. And sometimes there's good, fairly, straightforward replacements for certain foods. And sometimes there's just not. And so, for cookies like that, now it is possible to go to look online or at some grocery stores in a certain aisle where they've got the protein bars and the protein cookies, and they've got manufactured healthier versions of craveable foods. And so if the person's looking for muffins or cinnamon rolls or Pop Tarts, they have, higher protein, lower sugar versions of these that are out there. It's a suitable middle ground. And there's all sorts of recipes out there for, that use, stevia and, almond flour, or it's possible at home to create healthier middle ground versions of foods. And so there's hundreds of recipes out there, and all you have to do is look for, healthy version of, thanks to the internet, you can look for that. But the other approach is just to say, I'm gonna get it out of the house, and I'm gonna buy nice fruit, and whenever I'm having a craving, I'm just gonna eat the fruit and bite the bullet. And so those are the two approaches. There's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
And crunchy food is a real problem, like chips and potato chips. What's a healthy version of a potato chip? Well, some people would say popcorn. But it's a grain, and I'm not enthusiastic about popcorn. It does spike the blood sugar.
You know what I do is kale chips. I actually make my own. I don't like the ones that are out there, but I cut up my own kale and then I put them in there with a really healthy olive oil. And I use the Mrs. Dash I think it's like all bagel thing because it has no salt. And I just sprinkle it across and I add a little garlic and it's delicious. You put it under the oven, of course. I mean, you have to broil it for a few minutes, but it satisfies. I'm a big salt fanatic, so that helps me. The one for my sweet craving is I discovered this from an influencer on YouTube. Go onto the influencers on YouTube. They're amazing. I use Chalk Zero chocolate, little chocolate chips, which is no sugar. It uses an alternative natural extract and cacao, raw cacao, high in antioxidants, and apples. And you can blend it up and it literally makes pudding. And it's
Wow,
really delicious. Yeah, and I put a little maple syrup in it once I'm gotten to the point to sweeten it a little bit, but it's delicious. Absolutely delicious.
that's
So,
great. There's websites with all sorts of examples of these healthy homemade treats, right?
mhm. But like it helps you to wean off of them. And so in the final seconds here, I know we're a minute over. Any final thoughts to help people satisfy their diabetic cravings that are so unhealthy?
Kim, I love, people are looking for specific recipe ideas like the kale chips, and anything we can do to find some, I think, resources for people. And, one of the places that I've had, you know, guided people toward is a lot of keto sites. There's one I like called Diet Doctor, and that has, hundreds of recipes of low carb, low sugar treats that people can eat to help them steer away from what they're really craving. But the most important thing is recognize what's unhealthy, get it out of the house if you can, and just find something healthy to eat instead.
Instead of pasta, there was one secret you gave this patient that we started off this episode talking about. What is that root vegetable that makes for a wonderful noodle that I went out and purchased in the fettuccine form, and it was delicious, and I'm going to get more tonight because my dad is just getting out of the hospital today and he is craving carbs. So I am going to make a pasta out of that root vegetable.
Oh, well, so I had recommended shirataki noodles. It's just a
That's
brand
it.
and it's from an Asian yam, which is very different. I can't remember the name of it, but it's very different from the type of yam you would find in the United States or the Caribbean. And so, I can recommend shirataki noodles as as a noodle replacement. Also, there's a brand of noodle substitutes called palmini, which is made of hearts of palm. And I've made a healthy version of pad thai using palmini noodles. And then there's, cauliflower rice is a good replacement for rice. And there's that you cauliflower mashed potato replacement made out of mashed cauliflower. So
Those are great substitutes. And we appreciate your time, Dr. Dansinger. And of course, you can pick up our book, our collaborative effort to improve the diet for people who have peripheral artery disease. And with that, also diabetics. It's called Food for Thought. It's on Amazon. And of course, you know how to reach Amazon. I'm sure everyone does. But you can look it up easily by just putting in the search bar peripheral artery disease. And the books that come up, one of them is Food for Thought. And it's an incredible resource for every patient, offers some of those recipes that Dr. Dansinger was talking about and that I was mentioning, as well as those easy food substitutions that you can make that will make a very big difference in your diet. Again, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to both channels, Dr. Dansinger. You just youtube.com/at Dr. Dansinger. I think that's your YouTube channel, and ours is youtube.com/at the way to my heart. Make sure you subscribe to those channels for more amazing content like this. And of course, we'll be back next Monday. So make sure to join us then. Have a really good week,
two
everybody.
Mondays. Next
Oh, and
Monday,
2 Mondays.
Martin Luther
2
King,
Mondays.
and taking that day off.
That's right. He's allowed one day off. Thank you so much, Dr. Dansinger, for joining us. We really appreciate you. We will see you back here in 2 weeks.